I heard him call me background noise in a leadership meeting, a meeting I wasn't even supposed to hear. That's how this started. I was on mute, my Zoom window minimized behind a spreadsheet forecasting our Q2 churn reduction, an initiative I spearheaded, by the way. As I listened to him wax poetic about streamlining legacy personnel, I realized he didn't know who I was, or worse, he did, and thought I was already out of the picture. The thing about building something from scratch, you don't brag, you don't bark in boardrooms. You make the problems disappear, you make the numbers sing. You learn how to wield silence like a scalpel. For 15 years, I was the firm's fixer, the ghost behind the growth curve. A VP of strategy who knew every blood vessel in our business model, who could flip a failing regional branch in 6 weeks or patch a client data breach before the press even smelled it. I didn't need applause. I had leverage. Back when we merged with the European tech giant, I'd been one of 3 people on the internal transition committee. While the boys played golf and argued over the font in the new logo, I negotiated the integration clauses, including a little footnote, Section 8.1c, that executive compensation required unanimous board approval, including mine. Everyone thought it was a courtesy, a pat on the back, legacy gratitude baked into a legal formality. I smiled, signed, filed it with the others. For a while, everything ran smoothly. Sure, the usual chaos, downsizing, pivot fatigue, a few marketing disasters that smelled like recycled TED Talk slides. But the company held. We kept hitting targets. We kept clients happy. The merger turned into something halfway functional, which in corporate America is the equivalent of a miracle wrapped in a miracle. Then came the slow erosion. First, a chief marketing officer with a podcast, a new chief technology officer who called our legacy code ancient, and finally, him, Blake Harrison, the new CEO. Ex-Silicon Valley, ex-startup darling, ex-husband to 2 different social media influencers. Slicked back hair, keynote charisma. The kind of man who calls himself a visionary and genuinely believes it's a job title. He arrived like a Category 5 personality, waving buzzwords like a weapon: disruption, decentralization, cultural unfreezing. He liked talking about narratives, but the only one he respected was his own. I watched from the corner of the conference room as he smiled too wide and shook hands too hard. He never once asked who I was. It didn't matter. I was still on the board, still had my vote, and more importantly, still had the one thing he'd never understand: the patience to wait. You see, I always read the contracts, even the parts nobody else bothered to, especially those. Blake strutted into our quarterly all-hands like he was debuting on a runway. Navy suits so tight they looked painted on, hair so gelled it could survive a small tornado, and a smile that had all the warmth of a crypto bro's LinkedIn post about emotional intelligence. He opened with a story about turning a failing crypto startup into a case study in strategic liquidation. I don't think he realized that's just a fancy way of saying it tanked from the jump. He treated the room like an audience, not a team. Called us legacy warriors like we were Civil War reenactors clogging up his innovation pipeline. He said it with a chuckle, but there was venom in it. I caught the glance he shot at me when I brought up compliance bottlenecks in our European operations, like I'd farted during his TED Talk. He cut me off halfway through the sentence, literally raised a finger and said, "Let's park that." I'd been in boardrooms since before he learned to shave. I've been the calm and panicked war rooms during DDoS attacks, merger leaks, and that one time our chief financial officer tried to expense a $22,000 client retreat to a spa in Belize, and now I was being parked by a man who thought ROI meant really over it. His next moves were textbook. CMO gone, head of people gone, senior counsel gone. In came his trusted partners, a rotating cast of smug-offs with titles like Chief Culture Architect and VP of Vision. No one had a job description, but they all had 6-figure salaries, private Slack channels, and a suspicious addiction to oat milk lattes. I stayed quiet at first, bit my tongue so hard it practically had scar tissue. Played the good soldier, offered context, flagged risks, shared historical insights on vendor relationships and licensing conflicts. They'd nod condescendingly, then say things like, "Appreciate the legacy wisdom, but we're pivoting toward a future-first framework, whatever the hell that means." At one meeting, I brought up the risks of sunsetting our CRM without migrating client histories. He blinked at me like I'd spoken Latin, then turned to his VP of Vision and said, "Thoughts?" She replied, "The past doesn't scale." I wrote that down, not because it was profound, because I knew someday this whole sandcastle collapsed. I'd want to remember exactly how stupid it got. Still, I kept showing up because while Blake was out here pretending to be Steve Jobs in a fintech reboot, I was watching, listening, logging every blind spot, every arrogant shortcut, every contract adjustment request that somehow never involved legal review. And one detail stood out like a clown at a funeral. Not once, not in any of the transition documents, or in a single one of the inflated comp packages flying across the board, did anyone mention my voting rights? Not HR, not legal, not the board's compensation committee, and certainly not Blake, who clearly thought I was just another outdated cog waiting to be replaced with a fresher, flashier part. He didn't know, and I wasn't going to tell him. It happened on a Friday, because of course it did. HR ambushes never happen on a Monday. Too much paperwork. No, they save the gut punches for when the building's half empty and the janitors are already wheeling trash bags like body bags down the hallway. I got the invite at 3:12 p.m. Subject line, quick check-in. Sender, Sarah from HR, a woman whose personality could be replicated by lukewarm chamomile tea and a passive-aggressive emoji. I walked in with my laptop, still mid-email about a licensing renewal Blake's team was royally screwing up. Didn't even finish the sentence. Still had recommending we blinking on the screen. Sarah was there. So was Blake. No warning, no context, just a manila envelope already on the table, like a prop in a bad procedural drama. "Your role has been made redundant," Sarah said, like she was reading a parking notice, effective immediately. Blake didn't say much, just leaned back, placed his fingers over that smug chest, and offered a tiny, almost polite smirk. "We're streamlining, making room for fresh momentum, like I was dead weight in a canoe, like 15 years of war rooms, turnarounds, and 3 a.m. fire drills were just clutter. No goodbye lunch, no all-hands announcement, no slide deck with polite bullet points about new chapters and deep gratitude. Just a plastic security badge tossed into a return tray, and an intern I'd mentored last summer, awkwardly tasked with escorting me out. I remember walking past the big digital mission statement in the lobby. People, purpose, progress. I nearly laughed. It felt like being shoved off a boat with a life vest made of Post-it notes. As we reached the glass doors, Blake called after me, didn't even stand up. No hard feelings. "Yeah." I turned slowly, looked him right in the eye. The lobby lights reflected off the marble, casting just enough of a halo to make him look like a corporate deity. "I hope," I said, voice level. No hint of bite. "You read everything." He blinked. A flicker of confusion crossed his face, but I didn't stay long enough to enjoy it. I stepped out into the parking lot, the cold biting through my coat like shame through skin, and just kept walking. I didn't cry. Not then. Rage wants tears, but I trained mine to stand down. Instead, I went home, opened a bottle of bourbon I was saving for something meaningful, and poured one glass, just one. Sat down in the dark with my laptop, logged into the board portal, and just stared at Section 8.1c. No one had revoked my vote. They'd fired me, but they hadn't buried me. And now I was free. Corporate silence has a sound. It's not absence, it's static. The kind that hums behind PR statements and earnings calls. The kind you can hear if you tilt your head just right while scrolling a company's LinkedIn feed. That's where I lived for the next 3 weeks, in the static. Not raging, not plotting, just listening. I didn't have a plan. I wasn't trying to bring the place down, not yet. But I knew the smell of a slowly rotting carcass when I caught a whiff. The first sniff came from a recruiter friend at a conference who texted me, "You still at the company? Just got a weird hold-off on a senior UX offer I was about to close. That's not normal." Then another ping, an ex-analyst I mentored during the Salesforce rollout. New head of ops says she can't onboard until her comp gets finalized. She's been sitting on her hands for 2 weeks. Something's up, huh? Then came the dominoes. Their careers page was still listing roles they'd already filled. I recognized the names of Blake's cronies. Some of them had updated their titles on LinkedIn to acting SVP or strategic alignment lead. Cute, except they were still marked as in process in filings that had to be public due to our merger compliance. Next came the whispers from inside. Slack message forwarded by someone I'd had whiskey with after the Q1 layoffs. "Anyone know why payroll hasn't updated our contracts? Been a month, and I still don't have access to corporate Amex." Then a second. Still no formal letter for me either. Should I be worried? Then came the email that snapped it all into place. From Olivia in legal, a sharp woman, sarcastic as hell, used to leave gummy worms in my drawer during quarterly reviews. Subject: Question: Board voting rights. Body: Any idea why no one's received offer letters yet? We're told comp packages are pending board clearance, but no one seems to know who's blocking it. Didn't you used to handle that? Did I? No, not exactly. I never handled anything. I just had the final say. Section 8.1c. Unanimous board approval for all C-level and executive compensation. And my vote still listed as active. They hadn't resigned. They hadn't removed me. Which meant that even from exile, bourbon-sipping, house-slippered exile, I still had the power to press pause. Every offer letter, every salary, every bloated contract with performance-based equity and non-compete forgiveness, all of it had to pass through me. And I was voting no. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a silent click in a portal that no one had thought to lock me out of. The best part? They didn't even know yet. They thought it was a delay in HR, a clerical glitch, maybe someone on vacation. The interns probably blamed a misconfigured DocuSign template, but me? I just kept sipping, watching, logging every delayed rollout, every whispered panic over contracts stalled in limbo. It wasn't revenge, not yet. It was curiosity. How long before the new king realized the crown was made of sand? Turns out, not even his VP of Vision could predict what happens when you skip the fine print. It took one phone call to make sure I wasn't losing my mind, or worse, breaking some obscure clause I'd forgotten to read. "Chloe," I said the second she picked up. Hypothetically speaking, someone negotiated board voting rights as part of a merger retention clause and then got unceremoniously booted by a caffeinated man in a suit 3 sizes too small. Would that vote still be binding? She laughed. "Chloe's been my friend since grad school, now a partner at one of those law firms that sends holiday baskets filled with biscotti and NDAs. Her laugh faded quick. "Wait, you mean Section 8.1c, don't you? You remember the number? Framed it. It's legendary." That clause was a lawyer's love letter. And unless they filed a board resolution removing you and bought out your voting share, which they didn't because that would have triggered a material disclosure, you're still the guillotine on every golden parachute they try to hand out. Guillotine. God, I like that word. She confirmed it all in writing, even added a little summary in legalese for flavor, like she was gifting me a murder weapon and wrapping it in a bow. I waited quietly. Didn't do anything rash, didn't rage post, didn't lawyer up or leak to the press. Instead, I logged into the board portal late one Wednesday, 2 days before their next comp approval cycle. A new C-level hire, someone Blake imported from his hedge fund days, was up for finalization. Salary, $480,000 base, $200,000 bonus, stock options, Innovation incentive triggers. Cute. Click. Vote no. Just that. No speech, no comment, no explanation. I closed the browser. Didn't even feel dramatic. Just felt precise. Next morning. Rejected. Flagged for lack of unanimous approval. Delayed pending resolution. No one reached out to me. They still didn't realize what happened. I could imagine the panic emails bouncing between HR and legal. Compensation committees triple-checking workflows. Blake snarling into speakerphones while his assistant Googled board approval override. And me? I went out for pancakes. Because I knew this moment would come. This quiet click in the dark that sent ripples through a fake kingdom built on buzzwords and assumption. All because Blake Harrison never thought to ask what power looked like when it didn't come with a spotlight. I didn't have to fight back. I just had to withhold. That's the plan now. No revenge montage, no press leak, no LinkedIn expose with a filtered selfie and a sob story hashtag. Just stillness. No approvals, no votes, no signatures. Every time they try to push through a salary, a bonus, a performance equity tranche, I will be there. Not screaming, not threatening, just sitting in my kitchen, sipping black coffee, clicking no. Let the empire slow bleed itself, trying to replace a heart it didn't even know it had. Let him feel the absence of what he so casually discarded. Let silence do the work. It started small, an email chain here, a Slack message there. People asking the same question in different fonts. Has anyone seen our final comp letters? And like a slow gas leak, the confusion turned to unease, then to fear. By week 4, Blake's shiny new empire was running on IOUs and LinkedIn titles. The new VP of brand strategy, who once gave a 20-minute presentation on the emotional resonance of the color teal, was quietly downgraded to a consultant in the payroll system. She didn't even notice until her corporate Amex got declined trying to buy a $17 smoothie at an airport cafe. The head of ops was operating off a temp agreement with no severance clause. HR kept stalling, claiming vendor system migration issues, which is corporate speak for we're lying, but too tired to get creative. Morale tanked like a crypto coin after a meme scandal. Frozen budgets, shriveled deadlines, slipped into vapor. You could almost hear the pulse of the company slow to a crawl, like it was waiting for permission to breathe. Then came the first resignation, not with a bang, but with a 2-sentence email from the chief data officer. Due to ongoing uncertainty around my employment agreement, I'm stepping away to pursue other opportunities. Translation: I'm not working for free while your CEO plays house. Heard about it through a friend still on the inside. She called me, laughing through clenched teeth. You'd think someone would have caught on by now, but no. Blake doubled down, told the board it was a clerical backlog, blamed it on a software transition, claimed legal was doing a top-down doc audit. His jargon came faster now, louder. You could tell he was drowning by the size of his vocabulary. He gave a town hall, wearing a hoodie, his attempt to connect with the culture. Called the delay a temporary fog on the runway. Someone in the audience coughed the word meanwhile. The board started sniffing. I could see it in the increased frequency of their updates, the requests for clarity, the sudden appearance of performance metrics in Slack threads where they'd never been before. They were circling, not loyal to him, not to anyone really. Boards only care about the blood when it starts staining the money. And right on cue, I got the email. It was from the same junior liaison who once asked if ROI meant rules of influence. Subject: request to reconsider board vote. It was sweet, gentle. Said the company was in a critical transition period and that your insight and reconsideration would be invaluable at this time. No apology, no admission, just soft little bureaucratic pause trying to coax me back into the fold. I didn't reply. I didn't even open it fully, just saw the preview text, smiled, and archived it. Because this wasn't about vindication, not anymore. It was about gravity. I wasn't pushing. I wasn't sabotaging. I was just sitting very still while everything he'd built without a foundation collapsed under its own bloated weight. And I have to admit, watching Blake squirm from a distance, fumbling through board meetings, pretending he wasn't bleeding authority with every stalled contract, felt better than any revenge speech ever could. Turns out, the best way to kill a king is to remove the ink from his pen. Investor calls started leaking frustration like oil under a rental car. Q3 projections were off. Burn rate was up. Staff attrition looked like someone had taken a chainsaw to the org chart, and nobody could explain why half the new executives were still floating around without formal comp packages. One fund manager said it outright, "You've hired a leadership team you legally can't pay." That's not disruption, that's dysfunction. Blake tried to plug the holes with word salad. We're navigating transitional liquidity around comp structuring. Translation: we don't know what the hell we're doing, but it sounds expensive, so shut up. But when the board called an emergency meeting, I knew it was only a matter of time. They called it on a Thursday, asked for a strategic recalibration. That's board speak for someone's head is going on the grill, and we're just deciding what sauce to use. I still had access to the meeting link. They never revoked it. Sloppy maybe, or arrogant, or maybe they just forgot who still had a seat when the music stopped. So I joined, camera off, mic muted. Just a black square on the screen, like a ghost haunting the architecture they built on my bones. Blake opened, already sweating, not visibly of course, but in that way where every syllable has just a touch too much edge. He blamed logistical redundancies, then contractual misfires, then unforeseen integration lags. The board wasn't buying it. One member cut him off. We've lost 2 key executives. Morale's in free fall, and our new hires are legally unpaid. Can you tell us why in plain English none of this has been resolved? Blake blinked, swallowed. Still aligning final documentation with compensation frameworks pending board ratification. Silence. Another member chimed in, this one older, sharper, former CFO from a Fortune 100. Ratification requires a unanimous vote. Who's the missing vote? That's when the panic hit him. He stammered, actually stammered. We assumed all board members had aligned. Legal assured me. No, I said. Just one word. Calm. Cold. Cutting through the silence like a wire snapping under tension. The black square lit up. My mic unmuted. I heard him stop breathing for a second. The pause was delicious. I continued, slow and surgical. You assumed wrong. Section 8.1c of the merger contract requires my vote on all executive compensation. You fired me. You didn't remove me. The board members blinked. Some leaned forward. One cursed under his breath. Another voice, neutral, male, maybe one of the newer members, asked, "Is that accurate?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. I just pulled up the clause, read it aloud, every syllable deliberate. Then silence again, heavy, awkward, jagged, until I added, "Did anyone actually read the document you all signed?" The weight of it settled like dust after demolition. Blake tried to recover, started blaming counsel, process gaps, claimed legacy entanglements were creating friction. The board wasn't listening anymore. Not to him. They were looking at me, and for the first time in months, I saw something flicker behind those frozen boardroom expressions. Respect? No, not quite. Recognition. Like they just realized who'd been holding the reins this entire time and that their golden boy had been riding without a saddle, blindfolded on a horse named Lawsuit. The offer came the next morning. Polished, predictable, gutless. Subject line, strategic advisory opportunity, urgent consideration. They called it a chance to restore stability and regain operational momentum. Said I'd be instrumental in healing trust. Offered a lucrative retainer, executive access, and this was rich. A chance to mentor new leadership through the realignment process. In other words, please come fix the mess we let a tech bro narcissist smear across the company walls. I didn't respond. Not immediately. I let it sit. I wanted them to sweat, to feel the void, and I wanted to be sure that what I was about to do wasn't about ego. It wasn't. It was about consequences. That Friday, they held a closed-door session. No cameras, no recordings, just hushed voices and fast decisions. The term used was negligent governance. That's what they landed on. Soft enough for public release, sharp enough to sever Blake clean from the executive tree. He didn't see it coming. It was the part that landed the hardest. I watched from the wings. No gloating. No, I told you so. Just cold, clinical detachment. The kind I used to use in mergers when we'd restructure leadership like a surgeon removing a tumor with no anesthesia. They gave him 10 minutes to pack his things. No security escort. No send-off party. No LinkedIn farewell post with a fake crying emoji. Just deletion. Poof. Later that day, I got a second message, this one from Blake. It was short, pathetic in a way. Guess you got what you wanted. I stared at the blinking cursor for a while, debated whether to even bother. But then I typed, slow and steady. If you just respected the people who built the place, none of this would have happened. I hit send. No sign-off, no name. He didn't deserve one, because this wasn't justice. It wasn't even revenge. It was gravity. He pulled the wrong string, and the whole thing unraveled in silence, not from an explosion, but from a paper cut he never noticed until it bled out everything he thought he controlled. I didn't need my old office back. I didn't need my name on the door. I just needed the lesson to land, and it did. Hard. They assumed it was over. New CEO slides in, interim of course, wrapped in humble-brag press releases about rebuilding bridges and restoring trust. The board scrambles to patch the leaks. Consultants are flown in like exorcists. HR revamps their org chart so fast it catches fire in the back-end system. And for the first time in months, the lights flicker back on inside the building I used to call mine. But there was one last clause they hadn't considered. 2 weeks before Blake's exit, while the chaos still simmered and the comp packages hung in purgatory, I called Chloe again. "I'm ready," I said. She didn't even ask what I meant, just pulled up the documents we'd been preparing quietly in the background for months. A clean, airtight agreement to sell my voting share, conditional on one very specific requirement. No, not money. I didn't want a payout. That would have cheapened it. I wanted a reckoning. The deal was simple. Once every open executive compensation package was reviewed and cleared, I transfer my vote to a neutral trustee and formally resign from the board. But only if the interim CEO signed a written public statement acknowledging the failures of prior leadership to honor the contributions of legacy staff. And one more thing, full reinstatement of 3 departments Blake had gutted for optics. Real teams, real people, quiet workhorses who'd kept the place standing while he tried to turn it into a TED Talk incubator. They balked at first, said it was unconventional, said it set a troubling precedent. I told them, precedent only matters to people still writing their own stories. In the end, they signed, all of it. The new CEO, some MIT-bred operations guy who wore the same navy polo to every meeting, stood up at the next all-hands and read the letter himself. No spin, no filters. He thanked the departments, apologized for the disrespect, acknowledged that the past wasn't dead weight, it was foundation. He left the podium and didn't pretend to be anyone's savior. I didn't attend the meeting. I didn't need to. I just got the transcript, nodded once, and forwarded the final transfer agreement to Chloe. We clicked the last box. Executed. Done. That night, I took the same walk I used to take after closing a brutal deal, through the city's edge, where the buildings start to hush and the air stops tasting like tension. I wasn't angry anymore, wasn't even proud, just empty in a good way. The kind of clean you feel after something's been burned down to ash, and the wind finally starts to blow through. I did it for me, sure, but also for the dozens of people who were discarded like broken furniture just because they didn't speak in hashtags or wear blazers with sneakers. They deserved to be remembered, and now they were. Funny thing about fine print, it tends to scream when ignored. This story teaches us the invaluable lesson that true power and influence aren't always loud or flashy. Often, they reside in quiet diligence, deep understanding, and unwavering integrity, especially when others overlook or underestimate those qualities. It emphasizes the importance of respecting foundational contributions and the people who make them. The positive message is that even in the face of injustice or dismissal, holding firm to your principles and understanding the intricacies of your domain can ultimately lead to a more just outcome. Sometimes, the most impactful change comes not from direct confrontation, but from strategically allowing consequences to unfold, forcing a system to correct itself and ultimately honoring the value that was initially disregarded. Always read the fine print and never underestimate the quiet strength of those who do the real, unglamorous work.